So what I want to talk about was, and what I want to pivot to was, you clearly, you've done a lot. We know where you come from, where your grit is. You're a fairly driven person. That's, I think, one of the things that I noticed most about you when we first started really engaging with each other. But you've gone to these other conferences in the past and you found value in them. I found, I've been to every one of those conferences too, right? And I didn't start Data Center, DCAC Live because I felt like the industry needed another conference. I just felt like it needed a different one, or I used to say a better one, but really I don't have criticism for those other conferences. In fact, I like those other conferences and we need those other conferences, but I felt that the industry needed something else too. And that's what our conference has to offer. So if guys like LD were like, hey man, you got to come over to the States and do DCAC, you came for the first year to this conference. And this was the first year in years that I've been able to invest a little bit more of my heart and soul into it. Not that we put it on autopilot for the previous years to that, but it was really a conference. If I'm being honest, I did reach out to George at DCD and a couple of the other groups that had reached out to me. Yeah. There were some groups that wanted to buy DCAC. And at the time, I was like, well, if I'm going to start taking offers to get rid of this conference, I might as well talk to all the major players. And he's one of them I talked to as well. And it's just because it was in conflict with my passion, which is helping save veterans, and the vehicle that I was using to do that was really Overwatch, right? Yep. But I learned that the conference itself provided a lot of other things for a lot of other people in this industry. And it would have created another void, I felt, if we just dropped it or just handed it over to one of those other institutions that would turn it into another homogenous hotel conference that had, ballrooms or, whatever. And I really felt that the human dynamic was the most important part of these conferences, because I just did a podcast with Christian the other day, and Christian Bellotti, who's it was just announced in a press release that he's a senior advisor now at Digital Bridge, but he's a global icon and started at Microsoft. I mean, he started in a lot of other places, but he ended up leading Microsoft's massive windows of growth and had a profound impact on this entire industry. And it's interesting when you listen to his podcast, how he talks about how he would try to drive change when he worked at HP, and it hit a lot of resistance inside the business. So he would turn to the industry to define greater standards, and then would use those standards as a justification to drive some of the ideas he was trying to make and change. And it was brilliant in the way that, I'm not saying weaponized the industry, but the industry is, as a collective, incredibly powerful. But again, to the point that you made at the very beginning of this, it's just people. And it's those that have the ability to navigate within people. You still need to have the massive, deep, big fat brain, propeller hat, long division nerds that can go high, wide, and deep on a very, very sophisticated and a very, very complicated, heavily dense MEP commercial industrial application. But it still comes down to the way that we engage with other humans. And you came to DCAC not really even knowing what you're getting into. You were just getting a referral from another guy who said, go to this one instead. Understanding now that you've been to AFCOM and DCDs and other ones, what was the difference? And did you feel the difference? Because it's intentionally and deliberate designed to have a different impact. I wanted people, I think at those other shows, you're designed to understand what they're telling you. And I felt that at those conferences, no one really remembers anything that you say, but they do remember the way they feel leaving those conferences. And my focus was on the experience of creating something that where when people leave, they felt inspired, hopefully, to contribute or to invest more of their talent and passion into the industry. Did you get any of that?
Yeah. So I suppose, to talk first to not name necessarily any of them specifically, but I think all the conferences that I've been to have helped me in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
There are some, I've definitely become more of a fan of the captive audience, the audience where, it's, for people like me, there's a cost to going, because then it's not just a load of people, just running around like students and stuff, running around kind of going to a stand and tire kicking. And I've no problem, and I love seeing the next generation. And a friend of mine runs a group in the UK called Gen Plus One, and I really believe in that piece. So I'm not knocking that, but I mean, if you're paying to have a stand at these events, right, you want to make sure you're getting exposure to the right people.
Sure.
So I preferred the ones that are smaller, that are more niche, and then also the ones that have very strong content over the years. The bit I felt that most of the, I suppose, the takeaways from a conference like that were when you met a guy or girl for coffee or for lunch in a bar afterwards.
Unscheduled
meetings, or a referral. A friend says, Kirk goes Hey, God, you really need to meet Peter or, Chris or Joe or whoever it be, right? And whether it's up here, down here, or in the middle, and that kind of somebody vouching for something. And you can't schedule it. You know how hard it is to get in front of a lot of these people. And to me, that's where the value really was, and then you follow up on that and you meet those guys again. You come out to the US or they come to Europe or there are other people in Europe and you're meeting with. So they were the bits for me that where I've definitely done best, sitting in a lecture hall you can hear something interesting and you'll take something away and you'll bring it back to your engineers, your technical team and say, look, I really want you to research this because this is coming down the tracks. And how can we influence the power piece or how can we influence the environmental piece? But that's what, it was that, but it was the outside engagement. So when I came, talking to, and it wasn't just LD, it was other people at other conferences and other friends that I knew in the industry. They were look, there's just something unique about this one. And they said what you said, that look, I didn't, there wasn't necessarily need for another one, but I just felt there was need for a different one, call it better, call it different, whatever. And they all just said, look, it's different, and they try and explain to me what it was. And look, I knew by the logos and seeing, I love Akadaka, I love ACDC. So even seeing the logo flipped around and stuff like that. And, what DCAC standard for, for me, I was really intrigued, I have other friends in the industry we'll talk quite often, I'm not a big fan of the Navy Supergate. I hate having to wear one. I hated in the early years feeling like I had to wear one, and I know the world has changed a lot, right? Two of us are sitting here and we're both inked up. My ink purposely stops here. It stops here
where the shirt
because
stops.
I made a decision that I'll never wear it at that time. I'll never wear a short sleeve shirt to work again. And when I yawn wearing a long sleeve shirt, you won't see I have ink. I have no problem with my ink, but I know there was people at that time, and there probably still is, that have an issue.
I have an issue with it. I think it looks horrible. I'm joking, obviously.
So be it, man. And you know what? But that's
the body has to tell the story,
and it does. And I said to you earlier, if someone wants to ask me a personal question, if they're anyway clever, they can just spend a bit of time with a magnifying glass, and they'll figure out my whole life story by looking at my ink all over my body. And but going back to DCAC, I think that was the first piece. Someone said, look, you wear what you're comfortable wearing. The title of your position is irrelevant. It's you representing your company, but really representing you.
It's a t-shirt conference.
And I loved it, and even I was probably even a bit too dressed up. It was cool. This year I'll definitely wear a lot more. I'll have a lot more,
it's a way more chill. It's
I loved it.
Live music area, so.
And I'd always wanted to go to ACL. I still would like to go to an actual gig in there one day, but I grew up loving music. I still love music. I love events. So just from the second I got here, it was just different. The first night for me was a little bit more difficult because, look, I was a little bit of a fish out of water in the way that I know the UK conference sector.
And you knew all the players.
I know players, I know people. And even when I came to, let's say, the US-based DCDs, I'd know European people and I know US people are going to be there. So, and in fairness, you introduced me to, to Adam from the UK that night and we met. So the first night was a bit, whoa, this is This is different. Crowd. Yeah, it is. The other thing that was different for me that I have no problem saying is it was the first conference that I had ever attended where I wasn't drinking alcohol.
Which is odd because I have alcohol served in the first thing in the morning, it seems like. And open bar all day.
And you know what? Look, I go to Monaco. I go to PDC. I go to any of these events and there's alcohol everywhere if you choose to take it. Right? You don't have to choose to take it. But so it was the first time I was attending a conference where I wasn't having a drink the night before and having a drink that afternoon. And I'm a very sociable guy, but in a room where I didn't know a lot of people, it took a little bit of time for that to just, right, okay, where am I? Who are these people? And the first night was, the rooftop terrace. It was a really sweaty bar. It was cool, my type of place. Loved it. And I went to bed that night thinking, asking myself the questions, right? Have I changed? Am I going to struggle now because I'm not,
if the party guy?
Yeah, if I was having, because look, if I was 16 drinks deep, the chances are I would have gone up to the bar, ordered another beer, stayed another couple of hours, ended up knocking elbows with somebody. shooting shit, and before you know it, you know people. And I was like, "Ooh, okay." But I went the next morning, and that just disappeared in an instant. Bumped into a couple of people I know. Met David that morning. He brought me in. We were going in, and he was introducing me to people. And it was just that human side of it. It was that, you're walking around, there's IVs, people getting their head shaved, there's all sorts of stuff going on, all human stuff. But then when you go in and you go to the talks, they're still about power. They're still about nuclear energy. They're still about environmentals. But it's humans talking about it from a human perspective. But they're also bringing in the human angle. They're bringing in the bit of what's it like to be a female Hispanic in this industry? What was it like when you first got in? What, what can we do about it? Because for me, what's the one we talk about most is power. Power, right? But without the humans,
there is no solution.
They're the power. We're the first power that make this all work, and that's for me what is, as you said, I always talk, there's a hell of a lot smarter people than me in these rooms, right?
For sure.
And when it comes to learned smartness and, what we read in books and designing these buildings and building them and what goes on inside them and the compute piece. And I could spend another 100 years trying to learn it all. I won't, because it's their gig, right?
Well, as soon as you learn it, it changes.
Exactly.
This industry evolves way faster than human biology. So the innovation is at the forefront of everything. Absolutely. Because of what I've always said, and I'll say it on this one too, is our industry grows faster and more kinetically than any other industry because of every other industry. So every other industry's adoption into emerging technologies has a ripple effect that we feel at every data center, whether it's in cloud or AI or IoT or EIO, it all falls back. Everybody's consumer usage of technology, in addition to what they do for an adoption of technology to advance what they do in productivity and business, it all falls back into a data center, and we're responsible for that.
100%.
And I felt like this industry, I think that what we need is humans to be successful in business is, one, to be inspired by what we're doing or with who we work with. We also need to feel safe in the environment, and we're in a very dangerous environment where we're building stuff a lot. And I worked for a data center operator where there was a string of one entire month where, regardless of how much safety we try to inject into these programs, because you have so many human beings and you can't solve for all the elements of human nature or the circumstances of human nature. There was 1 month in my career where every week for 4 straight weeks, I was putting someone in an ambulance and sending them to a hospital. Fortunately for us, we were bringing them all back. The three most important KPIs in this industry are safety, then schedule, then cost or budget. And you can win the budget and you could deliver the project. I could deliver a program a month ahead of schedule and $1 million under budget, but it's not a success if I still sent someone home, and especially if they never came back. If I can't get them home, then there's a problem. So safety is a big thing. So being inspired and feeling safe, not just maybe from the kinetic dangers that we do, but from the politics of happen inside industry or inside business. And then they have to be fulfilled by what they're doing. And if they enjoy what they're doing and they can find real meaningful purpose in it, then they could be fulfilled and go home and be a better contributor to society, right? Be a better father, be a better husband, be a better wife, be whatever. And I felt like if I can continue to find a way to create a platform that allowed people to advance the industry from an innovation of technology perspective, we could tie in a part to this industry that allows us to invest more into humans as well. Because I felt like they aren't evolving. Biological evolution lags far beyond technology. So we needed to figure out a way to get people inspired, because right now when you hear about AI, half of the narrative is about scary shit. There are people who don't love humanity that were involved with the creation of some of these AI platforms. Are we sure that we're not building a Skynet? I think that the reality is it's never going to be able to be unleashed in the way that it could be, because it still was dependent on power, and we as humans haven't solved the power problem yet. Yeah. And we're at a tipping point. We're in the 5th industrial revolution. It started right at the end of COVID. And now we have to solve for power. And to solve for power, there's 2 existential threats in our industry. One is power, and the other is labor. I think if you solve for labor, you'll solve for the power problem. To do that, we have to bring this industry more to the mainstream, to introduce it to more people, because you stumbled into this industry on accident, and so did I. But what if there was a beacon for a collective that could be gained, where we could create an orbit around ourselves in this industry by driving this industry more to the mainstream that would bring in talented people from the trades or from colleges that not just bring talent, they bring their passion with them. And that helps be more disruptive to ways that we solve. There's solutions that we haven't thought of yet for power in the long term. Maybe in the short term, we know that we're going down fission, fusion, hydrogen, but we need to figure out what we're going to do in 10 years from now, in 15 years from now, when we as consumers have such a massive demand or create a much more pent up demand for emerging technology that we can't adopt it at the rate that we want it as consumers because we can't solve for it from power, right? So humans are the solution.
Absolutely.
So we tried to inject some human elements into this conference for the first time. And every year moving forward, we will again, I mean, DCAC next year, or this year, I should say, will be 2 days. And it's always been a little bit of a 2-day, or when the first day was just a golf tournament with a lot of networking in the evening and then a day of content. We're doing 2 days of content because there's too much to cover, right? I have diversity and inclusion where I have, women that are powerful and influential in this space come on. I had Alfonso Portillo led an incredible group of Latin American Latinos.
It was a great piece.
It was just the beginning. I mean, he's lost his own podcast platform too. And he's lined up some of the most influential people in this industry of minority, and he's going to help open the eyes, change the optics in the way that we view everything from a diversity and inclusion perspective. And he's really a pioneer. But we also will include next year European parts, like you will be a part of that, where in America, we want to talk more about what's happening over the pond, because you're right, a lot of those decisions are here. And there's a lot of people that only see what happens here in the States. Maybe even they're so myopic where they're maybe only regionalized. If it's not to a central region of the United States, maybe it's just in Chicago or just in Texas or whatever. But we want to broaden that aperture for everybody to understand how connected the entire industry truly is, because there are requirements based on certain things that are manufactured at certain specifications between America and here, but at the end of the day, we're still providing an SLA to an enterprise end user inside of an operator that needs a lot of capacity and a lot of power and a lot of space. So we have to figure out how we solve for that. So the element of human side I was hoping that people left. Now, when I talk to speakers at DCAC, they're always like, "What's the objective?" And I'm like, "You're not there to give everyone a PhD and a level of subject matter expertise on something that you could go an inch wide but a mile deep into. Your job is to expose them to something to when they leave, they feel like they have a responsibility as an emerging professional to go out and learn more about this industry and then break it down into how that industry impacts them and what they do in this industry." Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. I think that for me, it was that, as I said, that human side, right? One of the things that I felt that was, there wasn't a speaker. They were speaking about very technical topics a lot of the time, but there wasn't a speaker who at some stage didn't touch on the human side in some way, talking about imposter syndrome, talking about mental health, talking about different things. And I think why that's really important in my eyes is, we have to be open, but also if I go back to when I started going to conferences 10 years ago, I found that there was, at the start, there was very little in common with me and a lot of the other people in the conference.
Yeah.
So it was like, right, what do we have in common? We're human, right? And I think in my opinion, that's what I've seen in your conference, in your event, that isn't in the others. And that's not knocking them. They have set up their model in a very particular manner. In a very particular
there's a
way,
need for those style.
Right? But because where you've come from and you've looked at bringing, military people into the industry. So you're looking at diversifying there. You're looking at taking people that are trained, but very highly trained, very highly skilled people, very focused people into a sector that is very highly focused sector. So how do we get them into the sector? Now we're looking at, even if we took every ex-military person across the whole world, we probably still wouldn't fill the data center sector with the people that are willing to come into it. So you got to look in other places. So we're looking at young people, and a lot of them coming in. I know I did at the start and still do, got that kind of imposter syndrome, and you're looking up at these big names, these big, you read the books about some of these people that you've had pods with, and they are the people that have basically invented this industry.
100%.
Geniuses and brains. And you're sitting in a room and you're looking at them, and it's like sitting in front of Michael Jordan, and you're just going,
yeah,
but
these are your heroes. These are the celebrities of our industry.
Absolutely.
I get to sit in front of them. I'm like,
but they're human, right? And one or two of them were sitting up there, and like Chris Crosby's, and they were talking about, feeling exposed and feeling imposter syndrome, and you're like, wow, they do too. Because of course they do. They're bloody human, right?
So there's a lot of strength in that vulnerability that he has, which makes him a great leader.
Yeah, I think phenomenal, and it was cool to. And I mean, I'd been at, someone in his team was one of the first people I got talking to years ago. I was at a conference and I got the opportunity to meet Nancy Novak about 7-8 years ago, and again talked very openly and very strongly, and we ended up having a very short conversation, which has banked in my memory, just about modular construction and it coming into the data center sector and stuff like that, but talking about the human, it went to a human conversation.
She's a subject matter expert in construction, no doubt.
Absolutely.
She's really a pioneer on the women impact in this vertical. And she's leading that charge.
Big time, and so I suppose for me, it was that sort of piece that just opened my eyes. I had so many human conversations around it, and I'm constantly thinking about how do we attract more people in. Like I wasn't meant to be in roofing. I wasn't, I didn't grow up. My father wasn't a roofer. I didn't come from a family of construction people. Definitely didn't come from a family of data center people. But I found my home. I found my place, and that was for me. If I go back to the cross country running, a fast paced environment where the unknown
you could run others down,
and you gotta pick people off, and you gotta make sure that you are standing up yourself and being counted. Yes, as part of the unit and the team, but if you've promised something,
it's your
sure
name.
As well,
your professional
you better deliver it,
yeah.
Right? You better deliver it. And how often do you see now in this sector that people are moving all the time, right? There's a lot of moving and shaking because it's such a busy sector right now, and it's getting, we thought in 2020 when COVID hit 2021, it got busy. We thought that was busy. Now it's like that wasn't busy. That was a break.
We're about to get crazy.
That was a bank holiday. That was a day off. So with these people moving around, people are following each other because they're saying, I know you'll get shit done. I know I trust you. I know I can work with you. So your personal brand became more and more and more important. Obviously, your company wouldn't be qualifying in their particular field if they weren't ticking all the other boxes, the health and safety, the finance, all that, the compliance. But the human side of it became such a big part. And for me now, we're seeing a lot of it, and it was again at your conference and some of the others around the same time. Do you see a lot of people moving? They're coming towards retirement, and actually, there's a lot more 30-something to 40-something CEOs now than there was, because the ones who are in their 60s and beyond are moving on.
That started this industry. They're sunsetting.
They're moving on, and actually, a lot of the ones in their 40s actually have 15, 20 years experience. So they've still got age where they've got hunger on their side, and they still want to drive this on to the next place. But but there's that drive, but what makes us tick is a little bit different. I look at Pat, who is my outgoing CEO. He's 71 years of age. He hears me talk about mental health, and I say in our building all the time, we're human first. He's one of the most empathetic humans I know. But I know when he ran the business for 37 years, he wouldn't have been thinking of mental health. When you were talking a few minutes ago about injuries and ambulances, straight what happened in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, but how many people were sending ambulances or welfare to the people who were on that side who were struggling with addiction, who were struggling with financial issues, who, they didn't trip over because someone put something in their way or because they weren't being mindful. They did because they're in a different world in their head, because they're struggling with something emotionally, in the world of mental health. And some of that might be because they're working 20-hour days. Some of that might be because, they're not getting an opportunity to be mindful of the speed that this world is working at. It wasn't until I had a burnout that I realized how many other CEOs and other non-CEOs in our industry have had burnouts, feeling the same pain, listening to your podcast, some of them talking about it on that, So they're the things I felt that, while still thinking about our sector, still thinking about the power piece and all the other things, they're the things I felt that, along with having a whole load of fun, right? Music being a part of it, and that's what I felt about DCAC, that it was okay. That saying, it's okay not to be okay. It was okay to be yourself. It was okay to have tats out. It was okay to wear a t-shirt. It was okay just to, be you. and other people were willing to bring that to a certain level too. Professionalism still had to come into it 100%. You know, as I said, we're in a business environment, you know, we have to be professional, but there's no reason we can't allow our human personality and shouldn't ensure our human personality comes into it, because it's what makes us us.
So let me add to that, right? So there's been 5 industrial revolutions, and the last 3 kind of went back to back. The first few had some gaps in between them. And we started the 5th industrial revolution, which is designed for us to have a healthier relationship with machines and technology, or more harmonious relationship with this. And what I think it's doing, and what's great about the growth of AI, is it's putting so much pressure on a infrastructure system that's not designed for the volume of aggregate power that's being demanded from consumers. And it's going to force us to shift to a new or an additional power for the long term. And that has an impact on humanity, from the sense that what it will truly do is it'll force us to take the industry more to the mainstream. We're 25 years old. We're old enough to be grown-ups now as an industry. And the industry should be as prevalent as the automotive, manufacturing, healthcare, retail, whatever those other very established industries are that have been there, that a lot of them are governed on ethics. You know, if you're in healthcare or medical professional, or if you're in law, you know, you do a lot on the front end from an ethical perspective, so that you have a lot less unintended consequences downstream as a byproduct of that. And I think that the requirement for power is going to force us to change the way we deal with labor. And the beauty about labor is we're in a really interesting state where the industry is just now getting through its first generation, 25 years, let's say. And a lot of the tribal knowledge of people that started this industry are going to be sunsetting. And with them takes a great deal of knowledge and wisdom from where we started from.
Absolutely.
And it's going to force us to solve a major power problem that this world has been dependent upon change for a long time. I think that you have climate change, which will be the greatest thing that's impacted when we start changing the way we solve for power for this industry. And I think, again, everything aggregates back to this industry. So that's why this industry will be the tipping point for humanity and getting people right. And what I mean by that is, right now, our industry has been growing so aggressively and so fast that we would rip out and replace people just as fast as we do equipment that's not working. And now we are staring down the barrel where more than half of our workforce in this industry is either been in this industry for more than 20 years, or they're staring down the barrel of the silver tsunami, which is a lot of people. There are a lot of people that spent 20 years in another career before they got in this industry. Now they're retiring from a second career, and they're going to be the ones that we need to backfill. So we need to solve for the 200,000 to 300,000 people that we're already short on, but we have to change the way we approach our labor force. And the way that we approach our labor force is, today, if people don't work, the fastest thing to do is to rip them out and replace them with someone that can. But what happens when we get to the point where that's no longer scalable and it's untenable, because you don't have enough options to choose from now. There simply aren't enough talented people in this industry. Until it becomes mainstream, it won't ever have the talent it needs pouring into this. So what's going to happen is these companies that traditionally were building their businesses intentionally and deliberately on fast, because I asked them, like, what are you selling here? Volume and velocity is what we sell today. Well, cool. Well, you're not going to be able to do that if you burn out and break down all your people. So we as CEOs have to stop and try to figure out how to change that cycle. How do we take people that are burning out? Mental health, it's a factor. It's a factor from the homelessness that we have to deal with to what we're doing in our workspace. I can't begin to explain the number of people that I've sat front row on that have been working for us since we started, that we watched them have their own personal struggles, and the circumstances in their life are really challenging. And that has a negative impact on business. It's not financially accretive to maintain a workforce that's based on ripping out and replacing them all the time, because that doesn't breed loyalty. And you're not doing the industry any favors by passing broken people back and forth. We need to, as businesses, invest in the mental health care of our workforce. And if we could fix that, let me tell you why it's important. As a businessman, it used to be like, nope, you're going to put high speed, low drag, and injecting that model is going to take away or erode from that. But the reality is I gain so much more if I slow down and help someone recover and become healthier and stronger. Not only do I gain their loyalty because I didn't turn my back on them when they were broken, but I think that their output and productivity will be so much higher that it actually hits my bottom line. It'll pencil out more financially, more economically efficient. the healthier my workforce is mentally and emotionally and spiritually and physically, the more output and productivity I could gain from them. And I think the hyperscalers figured that first, which is why they made accommodations in every one of their campuses to make it easier for them to have a healthier balance or quality of life, to have a higher level of output and productivity. Everything starts with those groups, and then it translates through the ecosystem all the way down to groups like ours, where we have people in our charge that are going to have circumstances in their lives, which could be marriages, having kids, or having a loss in their family, or someone that was sick, or some other crazy thing like a COVID. But we have to slow down and fix those people. And I want to make that a part of DCAC, not just this podcast. This podcast is so that people could hear about where you came from, because you'll inspire some kid who's working behind the bar in Ireland right now. But it's also to help people be aware, like, hey man, we're all struggling. The struggle's real for all of us. No matter what they say, someone's struggling. They all have blind spots. They're still human beings. There's insecurities in everybody. Confidence issues are lacking, but we have to help each other get healthier and stronger. And I think the fifth industrial revolution is about that. It's about us slowing down and fixing our long-term power problem, fixing the way that we deal with our labor. Technology will allow us to help labor. As an example, my only goal is to increase the volume and velocity of human beings that we put back into this industry. Primarily, I'm pulling from the other mission critical vertical, which is known as the military. In the military, we don't measure our success on downtime like we do in this industry. It's measured in our mortality. Did someone die? Did someone get hurt? Did we all go home? And I think that if we could adopt that, we could open up the floodgates and bring more people in that may not have, quote unquote, the experience necessary to get in this industry. But technology will allow us to lower that standard and put technology on the helmets of some of these workers so they could walk through a construction site and be like, hey, I'm looking at, all the models that were loaded up and it looks like we're behind 4 days here or something. And they can tell that based on the model that's coming off of a head cam that's on a GoPro that's on their helmet. And now they could go back to someone who doesn't understand a little bit more and be like, hey, let's raise some red flags here. But we could gain more people into this industry, which would reduce the suicide rate amongst veterans by adopting more technology and slowing down to fix our humans. Do you agree?
100%. I think it's the skill sets that are, we initially think of a job on, I went to university, I studied this so I can do that job, and on paper you can. But does that mean you can actually physically do it?
Right.
Some of the people I know that are, on paper so intelligent, they actually really struggle when you put them in a group of other people, right? Okay, you're looking after the MEP or you're looking after whatever it is, right? Go into that room now and talk with the other people that are working together to make this project work. Because a data center project is about multiple trades coming together. And they're sitting there and but that's not what I do, it's social piece. Can't you get someone else to tell them what we're going to do? So, and that's where I suppose, like we were talking earlier, for me, people are the power, because you have that, you'll always have to join the dots. So I go back to when I was a kid, my favorite thing to play, outside sport and stuff, but at home drawing and stuff, was join the dots. So I loved taking a picture, it was little dots all over the page and joining up those dots and creating a picture. And I feel like I do that for a living now. Right?
Nice.
So for me, yeah, that human piece of those skill sets that are in the military, that are in whatever, they're so important, as long as we use the right knowledge from the people that are moving on or have been around the sector to help them understand how to use it. I'll bring it back to a personal piece. I feel like now, I'm a CEO, so I run a business. Yeah, so I'm a businessman. But I do lots of other things within that. I'm a counselor. I'm lots of
unlicensed therapist.
Yeah. And believe it or not, I'm actually a trained one. Okay. I went off for a career change many years ago. I taught about a career change, and I trained as an addiction counselor about 7 or 8 years ago, part-time, while I was working in this field. Because it intrigued me. It intrigued me why people become addicts, why that impacts them, what it does, and wanting to understand my own head and my own family and stuff like that. Another day's conversation. But, it was really important to me. But going back, I suppose, for me, those people, if we can give them the support at a much earlier stage, like even they do in school now, right? School is a lot more inclusive for people, dyslexia, ADHD, ADD, all those things, right? It's much more inclusive than it was when we were in kids, and that's where I was going to go back to. I believe I'm in business. I believe I run a business. So I believe I'm a businessman, right? If you want to call it that. When I was in secondary school, so high school, I had a teacher, and we have what's called honours level and ordinary level in the level of the examination you're taking, depending on where you want to go.
Sure.
And on core subjects, maths, English and Irish, we have a foundation level. And in business studies, we only had higher and ordinary. And I had a business studies teacher when I was 17, 18 years of age who told me that foundation level business should be invented for people like me because I'm stupid and I'll never get it, right? And you know what? She's probably right in the way that it was taught in the curriculum, because I didn't know it, but I was dyslexic. I was just told I was stupid. I wasn't as clever as my brother who went off to be an engineer. You know, and I was always compared. And yeah, in that way of learning, I wasn't clever in the way
that homogenous environment. Yeah.
But, you know, over the years, I learned a lot of different ways, you know.
You get creative.
Yeah, and you have, you know, I see the world in pictures. I close my eyes. Anyone asks me a question that's about anything over 10 years ago, the first thing I'll do is close my eyes and excuse myself to tell them I'm not sleeping, by the way, if you don't know me, because I'm trying to picture what was happening in that moment, how everything strings together, how those dots were joined. And that's how my brain works. But my point of that is, if I decided not to go into business because that teacher told me I was stupid and I'd never succeed in business, then I wouldn't be sitting across from you today. I would have said to that guy in the bar, "Go, nah, no what? I'm too stupid for this. I'll just stay pulling pints," you know. So I think we have to get to those people and find ways to get to those people that mightn't find their way naturally to this path, you know. So
we have to help them discover it.
Absolutely.
That's what this podcast is for. I mean, your whole dedication to the therapy or the mental awareness of you and those around you is a testament to what we're seeing in the fifth industrial revolution, which is we're all waking up. There's access to so much content now that we're no longer conditioned to follow the propaganda that comes from traditional media, which is all programmed for us to feel a certain way. Now we're using podcasts to get a better understanding of how people get to where they got. And I think that that's what this whole podcast was for too. So like we're running up against it right now, but this isn't the end. This is the beginning, you know, and I hope to be able to sit down with you again during DCAC in Texas this year, as well as you're helping us put together one in either Dublin or London. Yeah. And we're going to do it in 2024. There's another conference coming. You're going to be a part of that, and you're going to help us scout out some of the options that we have there. And we're going to be really relying upon you to use that network that you have to help make others out there aware that, hey man, there's another conference for industry coming. And it has the same objectives of some of those other ones. We kind of pick up where they left off by trying to make sure that we spend about 1/3 of our focus on the human being element of what we do in this industry, not just what we're doing and how we're doing it, but why we do what we do, right? And that's what drives us as humans. Do you agree?
100% agree. And I'm really looking forward to doing that together and working on that together. And yeah, and I think that, you know, it's required, you know, in wherever we go in the world, that piece is required. And yeah, I think the fireside chats and stuff, you know, that we saw in DCAC in Austin, and I'm looking forward to coming back to Austin next year. I'll be here and I'll have a couple of my team with me as well. And there's a many other, and there is others from Europe already coming, but I think more as we connected, and from my piece, I'll close on where I am, I suppose, with that is that I see that whether the conference is on in the US or it's in Europe, one of the pieces, or in Asia, wherever it may be, one of the pieces is that when we're sitting and looking at that couch on a fireside chat, that is the bridge between the different territories and the different markets, because there's knowledge on that couch when you have 2, 3, 4 people that bridge that gap. Because there are differences, but there are similarities. But if we take the knowledge from both sides, we can really bridge that gap, you know. And I think on the technical level and the human level. So yeah, no, the European one is something I'm really looking forward to.
It's going to be awesome. This is our first one, right? This will be our first time over there. So
super.
It'll probably be smaller than normal, but it'll still be hopefully of the same amount of value. So
it'll be impactful.
Well, listen, I appreciate you making the trip over here. Yeah. We're going to get you some basketball games. Maybe we'll go buy you some fresh panties since we lost your clothes. I think it's time for some
new jocks. Yeah. Thanks a million. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining the DC Revolution, man.
Super.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man.